Hello, everyone. I'm excited to welcome you all to our very first episode of the podcast series, Enabling Efficiency. My name is Humera Durrani, and I'm a managing consultant here at ZPro Solutions. Today, we have a special treat for you as we delve into insightful discussions with one of our organization's most valuable assets. Joining us today is Patrick Onuba, who brings a wealth of experience and expertise to our team. Patrick has been an integral part of our journey and has contributed remarkably towards the efforts of our enterprise asset management team. He's a Maximo expert and a solution developer. Without further delay, let's get started with this exciting episode. We have a lot to learn from Patrick, and I'm sure all of you are eager as I am to dive into this conversation. Patrick, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Humera.
Patrick, I'm sure our listeners would love to learn more about your background and your journey here. We're so happy to have you here at ZPro. Can you give our listeners a little bit of your professional background and how you got to where you are today?
All right. Awesome. Well, I will start by saying that I was born in Boston, Massachusetts. I was raised in Nigeria, where I learned the language and the culture. So I'm Nigerian by heritage. I'm married with three kids. And fun fact, I attempted to pursue a career in the music industry as a hip hop and R&B artist when I was much younger in my teens. So I obtained my electrical engineering degree with a minor in math at University of Houston back in 2005. And during the course of pursuing that degree, I started working and paying my way through school. And I started at a company called Caprock Communications. And that was really my first introduction to Maximo. We were using the ticketing system for end user support. I was like a help desk analyst at the time. And then they went into a upgrade project, and I got even more hands-on, participating as a user and a tester for an upgrade, from upgrading the system from 5.2 to Maximo 6.2, and really developed a love for the product, a keen interest in the product. And that's really where my journey began. I then worked for Fluor Enterprises as an administrator, moved on to KBR as a techno-functional consultant, helping with implementing the PM module. Moved on from there to BP, where it was like a data conversion project. From there to Eagle Rock Energy, where I was the sole Maximo resource. I don't think I ever want to do that again because everything for Maximo was on my shoulders. It was a lot, but you know what? In retrospect, it was a blessing in disguise because I learned a lot about Maximo's capability and the system. And that really helped
Mhm.
propel the rest of my career. If I think again, I worked for GE, Atwood Oceanics, EFH, which is where I got a chance to meet Zishan, um, Amarin Energy, and then recently Entergy and Evergy projects where I played different roles as a developer or consultant. My experience with Maximo over the past 15 years has really spanned, playing a lot of roles, wearing different kinds of hats. And I
Yeah.
love that because it does not create, it breaks the monotony of doing the same thing, over and over again. So yeah, that's a little bit about my background, Humera.
Wow. What an impressive resume, Patrick. We are so grateful to have you here and to learn from you. ZPro Solutions is an IBM Gold business partner, and we specialize in enterprise asset management, um, as well as being a full service Maximo implementation provider. So there is a lot of curiosity about learning more about IBM Maximo and its advantages, and if it's the right move for other firms, for our clients. So that's primarily why we're talking to Patrick here, given his expertise and given his wealth of experience with Maximo. Patrick, I'm gonna get started and and help our listeners learn more about IBM Maximo with you. So, can you at first just give us an overview of IBM Maximo and its role in enterprise asset management?
Sure, absolutely. Maximo is a single yet powerful platform for managing an enterprise's assets, right? Everything you would need to do with your asset from cradle to grave. And that would include things like optimizing the performance of your assets, extending the life cycle of your assets, reducing operational downtime so that you can increase or maximize your bottom line, right? You're squeezing out every ounce of productivity that you can out of your assets. So Maximo, in a nutshell, is a fully integrated system. I like to think that it's fully customizable. It's scalable, right? For
Mm-hmm.
every
Mm-hmm.
major industry that's really concerned about getting the most out of their assets. That's how I like to think of Maximo.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned extending their life cycle. Can you tell us how exactly, Maximo contributes in the optimizing the asset performance and extending the life cycle of assets?
Absolutely. It's able to do this in, like I said, in one platform. It uses different, you see, Maximo is broken down into modules, which in turn are just a collection of different applications, related applications. So
Mm-hmm.
with those modules allows for better collaboration across different departments. If you think of like a large enterprise that has different departments, usually what you find is that different departments are using different systems for their different
Mm-hmm.
roles to execute their daily roles. But with Maximo being fully integrated, all those modules are already built in. So through capabilities like workflow, and routing work and start centers and a beautifully rendered user interface, things like planning for your assets, right? Doing
Yeah.
valuation for your assets,
Mhm.
procuring and installing those assets, tracking your assets, maybe using things like QR codes or GPS or RFIDs, doing things
Mhm.
like predictive and preventive maintenance, for example.
Yes.
Even when it comes to working on those assets, work management, or providing parts and tools, and the whole supply chain around your assets, down to decommissioning those assets, knowing when you are now maybe needing to make a change so you can continue to improve on your investment, your return on your investment. Those type of tools are in the form of applications within modules inside of Maximo, and that's how it's able to help with better optimization of your assets.
What about extending the life cycle of assets? How
Yeah,
does it achieve that?
yeah, because when you're able to do all of these things, right? Okay, let me talk about maybe some of the key functionalities, right? And I
Yes.
think
Mhm.
maybe in
That
talking
was my
about those
next
things,
question. Thank you.
yeah, I think they're interrelated. I'm glad I'm reading your mind,
Mhm.
Humera. I think in talking about the functionalities of Maximo, I think we'll see the correlation between that and how that helps overall to extend the performance or the life cycle. Because for one, when you look at a beautifully rendered interface and customizable start centers for different departments, then someone like, say, your managers versus
Mhm.
your field workers versus your HR personnel or your your inventory managers, if they have different dashboards that are rendered with just relevant material for themselves, they can be very effective and very efficient. That helps your
Mm.
bottom line, right? When you
Yeah.
look at a multi-site architecture, meaning that with one single database, right, you can both maintain data sharing and data separation for a large organization that could be geographically spread out across a country or even countries. That helps you with cost management for maintaining and managing your assets. I mentioned supply chain. Through things like the inventory manager, using PRs, POs, receiving modules, and things like that. You better manage your supply chain. You remove inefficiencies in doing your procurement and your inventory management. That also helps to extend the life of your assets. Down to when you look at support, companies spend a lot of money on technology and even more on supporting that technology. But when you have your tools that you would need already built in for configuring the system, customizing the system, that also helps your bottom line. And then last point I'd like to make is integration, right? Integrating with external systems. You might already have other systems or legacy systems. You need to have them. You need to continue to maintain them. Maximo being able to integrate with those systems to continue to support these assets. All these things allow you to extend, because at the end of the day, if you can improve your bottom line, remove waste, maximize return, be predictive and proactive in your management of your assets, then obviously you're able to extend the life of those assets so you can get the most out of them. So there's no one singular thing. I think it's the way that all these different components kind of work together, Humera, that I think in my
Mm-hmm.
mind allow for better overall asset management and extension of their life cycle. I hope that answers your question.
You mentioned the integration capabilities of IBM Maximo just right now. Can you elaborate more on that, on its capabilities with other systems and tools commonly used in organizations?
Wow. That is this is one of my favorite things to talk about when it comes to integration, because many times we jump into integration not necessarily taking into consideration holistically what are the things you have to consider before even starting an integration, and what makes Maximo so unique in fulfilling that requirement, right? So let me start by talking about considerations, and I'll get into maybe some of the technical details that Maximo is capable of. One of the things
Yeah.
you want to look at, and this is now where workshops, meetings, interviewing, all that come into play, discovery, if you will. So one of the things you'd like to discover are, what are the scope of what are we integrating to begin with? What are how much data and how often do we need to move this data or integrate this data between the systems? What direction will this need to take place, right? Is it inbound or is it outbound? And what is it doing? Are we creating new records? Are we updating records? What protocol is that external system capable of, right? What mode? Are we doing these integrations in real time? Or are they scheduled as batch processes maybe in the background? How would we trigger these events? What will be the catalyst or the trigger for an integration to take place between the systems, right? What processing method, right? Are we going to be doing this like kind of like a fire and forget about it, or will we need to kind of maintain connections until we're sure that the record has been processed?
Yeah.
What data format are we even dealing with? Are we dealing with flat files? Interface
Mm.
tables? How will we handle error messaging, right? And is that external system able to have a direct integration with Maximo, or will we need some kind of middleware tool? So these questions are integral, Humera, because when you start to answer them, then you will
Mm.
appreciate Maximo's myth capabilities, because everything I just mentioned as a consideration, Maximo has a
Mm-hmm.
solution for. Okay.
Wow.
It has
Yeah.
predefined built-in content to do all of these things in one system. And that's powerful.
Mm. That is.
Maybe dive into this a little bit more in terms of maybe the specific ways that Maximo is able to handle all of these. But at least from a high level, I think our
Mm-hmm.
listeners need to know each of these considerations for a successful integration between Maximo and an external system. All
Yeah.
these considerations can and are indeed handled by Maximo.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just and that's, I think, the incredible advantage of Maximo, because as we know, Patrick, working with clients and just working with different departments with the same client, we'll see, that they're using this system and they're extracting data from this other system, and
Yes.
nothing, and the departments aren't necessarily talking and their systems aren't talking. So integration is, you know, from my perspective, and I definitely don't have the wealth of experience that you do, I would say it's definitely one of the key highlights of when I think about the benefits of Maximo.
Yes.
Um, Speaking of benefits, what industries or sectors do you think can benefit the most from using IBM Maximo and why?
For sure, I would say transportation,
Yeah.
companies in the transportation industry. And the reason
Hmm.
why, when you're managing your fleet of cars or trucks or rail or ships, you need to navigate very stringent regulatory requirements. You need to
Yeah.
be able to check, your asset statuses, metering, warranties, um, and things like that, maintenance. So transportation industry is one, utilities industry is another.
Hmm.
Work and asset management for things like transmission and distribution lines. You know, crew management, meter management, GIS integration. They can benefit tremendously from using Maximo. And then I also think of oil and gas. They have a
Mm.
lot of regulation, a lot of ISO reliability data that they have to transmit, failure reporting, qualifying the right labor and tasks, to meet these stringent regulatory requirements. So, and having add-ons like Maximo Anywhere, Maximo Spatial, Maximo Scheduler, these three industries are especially suited to benefit from Maximo. But even with that said, though, I think any company in the public or private sector, as long as they're willing to, put out the resources, the capital, they can truly benefit from Maximo because you can scale it up or down. It can get as sophisticated or as basic as you need it to be, and that's where having the right team, the right experience to come in and do the analysis and the correct implementation. That's where it comes into play. But yeah, those three specifically, Humera: transportation, utilities, oil and gas, for the reasons I gave.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And given your kind of your broad background of working with different types of organization, can you share some real world examples how you've seen or maybe you've heard of others how you've seen organizations successfully implement Maximo to improve their asset management process?
I can think of, I'll use Amarin Energy, because that was a fairly complex project. They're in the utility space, and they had like 15 or so legacy systems that they were using, to manage their utilities assets. And once Maximo was demonstrated as a powerful and singular platform to kind of replace the majority
Mm.
of these systems, then the
Hmm.
approach was initially to first integrate with those systems, do
Yeah.
the conversion, and then eventually over time phase those external systems out and utilize Maximo as that singular source. So we worked on that project for over 3 years, and I
Hmm.
saw how, I mean, you're talking over 100 touch points, if you will, for this data conversion and integration. And in so
Yeah.
doing, what we ended up with, Humera, was mitigating the risk of having so many different external systems that were using so many different communication protocols, different data formats, different technical languages, and even more so was the operational cost, right? The operational
Yeah.
cost of managing these different systems and the resources for supporting these different systems. So
Yeah.
over the course of the time of this project, in completing the conversion and the integration, and then eventually, training and then phasing out those systems, we were able to help this company realize a significant savings long term,
Yeah. Yeah.
over the cost of now supporting and maintaining their utilities assets in the long term. I'm not privy to the exact dollar amount. I just want you to know it
Yeah.
was pretty significant, to do it, which is why they made the investment to begin with, to pursue that effort.
For those that are listening in that are curious about perhaps implementing Maximo, considerations do you think these organizations should keep in mind to ensure successful adoption and integration of Maximo?
Yes. I would say the first and foremost thing is, don't cut corners. Don't think of this as a mom and pop solution that, you can get Joe Blow in the basement to come in and put for you. We're talking world-class system, a robust, powerful system. So I think companies need to first of all come to terms with the fact that they are about to implement something that's pretty powerful that will have long-term significant benefits for them and a return on their investment. And coming to terms with that, recognizing that they need to seek professional and proven expertise with the right resources. So
Yeah.
for starters, that's where I think ZPro plays a unique role. Like you started with for our audience in your introduction, ZPro is a
Hmm.
unique and strategic business partner of IBM. And that's not an easy
Hmm.
feat. It really is a
Hmm.
testament to the hard work and visionary leadership of Zishan and the rest of the leadership team. Because
Hmm.
ZPro is one of the few companies that has successfully not only implemented Mass 8, which is new technology for several clients, but has over a decade of successful, experience implementing Maximo, bringing competent resources for various projects. And that's what's earned ZPro the reputation, the coveted reputation it has amongst its peers in the industry. So I would say that for starters, it's professional and proven expertise. The next would be cost, no,
Hmm.
having the budget and making sure the resources, the budget is put aside, the money to do this, having realistic timelines, you know, um, knowing that the right tools are important, for an efficient implementation, and then open lines of communication. One of the reasons I see that project timelines get extended, scope creep happens, is as a result of not very transparent and frequent communication. But as long as I think these things are taken into effect, um, every company has the means of is able to successfully achieve a successful implementation of Maximo. These are some of the things that come to mind from my experience that I think should be main things if you're considering using Maximo for your enterprise asset management.
Thank you, Patrick. I agree from what I've seen as well. I think, professional expertise, having a as accurate of a budget as possible, and having open communication between the experts from outside, and of course making sure that there's internal communication between the departments, between leadership, is all essential for a successful implementation. I mean, Maximo is an incredible product, but it's only as good as, the people that are using it, and
Yes.
making sure everyone is on board. So
Yeah.
that's very important. And you mentioned very briefly, Massey. I was wondering if there's, and you can briefly tell listeners about it, but are there any recent updates or innovations in Maximo that listeners should be aware of and excited about?
Um, yeah, I mean, IBM is a leader in this space with a very large portfolio. So it only makes sense, that they're always innovating, and those innovations also lend an opportunity to implement those innovations, those technologies into Maximo. So for Mass 8, while I can't speak in depth about all of its capabilities, I can tell you that, the proliferation of cloud, right? Cloud-based solutioning today, artificial intelligence today, data analytics and the importance of real-time data presentation and interpretation, like those things have been incorporated into Maximo in the form of Mass 8, right? And it's become now a formidable product in the industry. So just when I think about the innovations, as technology and the capabilities grow, those things are incorporated and implemented in Maximo, and yeah, so just from my estimation, Mass 8, I think, embodies some of the most recent innovations that you've seen in the technical industry right now.
Yeah, exciting, exciting stuff. Thank you for sharing, Patrick. I hope our listeners have learned a lot, or at least, we've piqued their curiosity about learning more about Maximo and also how ZPro can help them achieve, their organization's needs. Before I let you go, Patrick, just curious if you want to share with listeners, um, just more right now what you're working on, what makes you excited being part of the ZPro team. Just love to hear a little bit more.
Yeah, I just came off of a pretty, large, complex, and sophisticated conversion project with Evergy, and in between projects now transitioning to the next one. So just taking a little time off right now. I've been doing quite a bit of traveling, catching up on personal errands,
Good.
working on personal development and
Mm,
preparation for, the next projects. Um, so yeah, I love the ZPro family. I'm excited to be a part of it. Zishan and I share a long a friendship, and he's like he's become more than just a colleague who I worked with, years and years ago, to
mm,
a friend, someone that I
yeah,
consider a brother. And I love that culture doesn't just exist between that relationship doesn't necessarily exist between me and him. It's
yeah,
permeated the culture of the entire organization. When I see interactions between members of the organization, I see family, I
yeah,
see care, I see empathy, people
yeah,
working with a genuine interest in the well-being of their fellow colleague. And I think that that's a recipe for success. It will continue to allow
yeah,
ZPro to grow, to attract the best talent in the industry, and a place where people can feel like they're part of a family, not just a job, or just a career.
hmm,
So yeah, that's my take. I love it. I love being here, and I look forward to a very long relationship with ZPro.
yeah. I couldn't agree more, Patrick. I just joined this year, but I've known Zishan for a while, and also just meeting colleagues and our interactions have always been so pleasant, and there's always so much to learn from each other, just like today. So I really want to thank you. I really want to thank our listeners for taking the time to, listen to this conversation and learn something. So thank you so much, Patrick, for being here. I hope you have a great day.
Thanks again for having me. It's my pleasure, and I had a blast doing it.
Likewise. Take care, Patrick. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.